Bang! For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this LouieTeeNetwork exclusive limited series, The Reign of Terror, as we continue to chronicle the 23 years of hell Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. We've gone through the first 3 years of Daniel Snyder's tenure, 99, 2000, 2001. Now we land on 2002. 4 years, 3 different head coaches, the third of which, the Ole Ball Coach, one Steve Spurrier, who just 10 days ago had resigned from the Florida Gators, where he had won a national championship back in 1996, and found himself in Washington signing the richest contract in NFL history for a head coach, 5 years, $25 million. It was a big deal, okay? For those of you who weren't, a fan of the team or weren't following the team or weren't even alive, it was a big effing deal, okay? And so I was excited. I'm not going to lie. Like, early Snyder tenure, I was excited about a lot of the stuff he was doing. I didn't know any better. None of us really did. I think we started to see some of the new car smell starting to fade after the Marty year. But going out and getting a guy like Spurrier with a big splash then, there were so many things fundamentally wrong with everything that was going on in Washington at the time, though. For starters, this roster was horrible when Spurrier got here. And it was made worse by the fact that Spurrier wanted to bring along a bunch of former Florida Gators, which Snyder obliged. We had lost a good portion of the roster, the good football players at least, that were up for contracts or, you wanted to keep that you couldn't because Snyder had done so many erroneous contracts or brought in so many big name guys that you had to let go some of the core players and they were playing elsewhere. The Derek Smiths of the world, the James Thrashes, the Larry Sinners, those guys were gone, right? So this team had deteriorated. That 99 team that almost made it to the NFC Championship game, that was it felt like a long forgotten afterthought, okay? So, think about this. Spurrier comes in here, and your starting quarterback is Shane Matthews, a journeyman quarterback who started for Spurrier at the University of Florida in the 90s. He also brings in Danny Warfel, who I think won him a national championship at the University of Florida in the 90s, in 96, as a matter of fact. He brings in Chris During, who is a receiver, I think on that same national championship team, who played for Spurrier, if not a little bit further down the road. He brings him in here. So he's just bringing in a whole bunch of guys that he's familiar with who know his system. Those aren't good football players, by the way. So you're watering down the roster doing that. Spurrier is continuing to spend, okay, despite the whole, Deion Sanders, Andre Reed, Mark Carrier, Jeff George thing not working out. He doesn't give a shit. He's back in the saddle. He's back in control. So he's back out spending money. So he goes out and gets Jesse Armstead, Jeremiah Trotter. That was an epic fail. It was not a fun time to be a fan of this team playing video games like I was, because the team was trash. You couldn't win games on Madden with this roster. In comes Spurrier, and the first thing that he says at the presser is the first game ball he's going to give, owner Daniel Snyder is when we beat Dallas. Keep in mind, we hadn't beaten Dallas in 9 straight games. They had beaten us 9 straight times, and this is with a collection of junk towards the back end. You're losing to the likes of Quincy Carter and Anthony, I always forget his name. The guy that I told you beat us last year, yeah, him. It's a mess. It's a who's who. You're losing to Chad Hutchinson. These are the quarterbacks we're losing to. The Cowboys were awful from 99 on. The Cowboys were awful, and they still were beating us twice a year. It was ridiculous. So Spurrier's first declaration is that we're going to beat Dallas. And the first time we saw the Cowboys was on Thanksgiving. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Anyway, does this sound familiar to you? Spurrier wants no part of the first-round quarterback that Washington drafts. But guess who made the selection anyway? Ding, 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 old Danny boy himself inserts himself, interjects himself into the draft. First round selects Patrick Ramsey. Now, I was a massive P-Ram fan, okay? I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and act as if I didn't like the selection, because I did. I thought P-Ram could play, and I felt like if we would have done a better job of surrounding him with talent and protecting him, which we'll get to in the next episode, I thought he could have actually had a solid NFL career. But that's nor here nor there. They drafted Patrick Ramsey out of Tulane with the final pick of the first round in 2002. And the Ole Ball coach wanted no parts of P-Ram, okay? Stuffed him at the back end of the roster as the third string quarterback behind his two Florida boys. And he kept the party going, right? So this is a disaster from the beginning, just so you know, okay? Spurrier didn't know any players on the team's name before he got here. The only guy that he knew was Stephen Davis, and that was because he played at Auburn, an SEC rival of the Florida Gators. That's the only reason he knew Stephen Davis's name. It's akin to when Urban Meyer got here or got to the NFL, and he asked one of his assistant coaches, "Who's this 99 guy on the Rams? He's amazing." And they're looking at him with this blank stare like, you can't be serious right now, right? You do know who number 99 is for the Rams. And he's just in awe of this guy that he's watching on tape. Doesn't know his name. And that was Steve Spurrier when he got here. He was just clueless. He didn't know any. So I remember reading an article from John Keim like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And, there's so many stories about the Steve Spurrier years, the 2 years that he spent here in Washington. And as bad as the team was, the stories just balance it all out. So it makes it palatable, right? It makes it tolerable that we sucked, because the stories are just irresistible. And they say that this guy's on the practice field, and first of all, Spurrier doesn't care about anything other than the offense. He could give two shits about what they're doing on special teams, what they're doing on defense. So I read this article from Keim, and Keim is talking about how at practice, the first team defense is going up against the scout team offense, and Spurrier's over with the special teams, showing them that he can bounce the ball off the ground and catch it behind his back. Your first team defense is on the field in practice, and you aren't paying any attention. You could care less. Now, I will say that they had Marvin Lewis in 2002, right? And this was him fresh off of his Ravens, 2000 Super Bowl victory and having that dominant defense. And similar to Eric Bieniemy, this guy's towering over the most dominant unit in the sport, but another black head coach finding it hard to get a job. So instead of him getting a job off the strength of the 2000 Ravens, which is one of the best defenses in NFL history, he's got to come to Washington to be his own man, which is the stupidest thing ever. Oh, he's got Ray Lewis. He's got, all of these talented guys, Chris McAllister and, Michael McQuarrie. And they're so talented. It's not Marvin Lewis's doing. It's all the talented players that they have. Okay, right. So he comes to Washington in 2002 for his 1 year as a defensive coordinator. Go figure, right? It's not a surprise that LeVar Arrington has the best year of his career under Marvin Lewis, who unleashes him, 11 sacks. LeVar doesn't even get remotely close to that the remainder of his career. He would line him up as a defensive end, similar to, literally LeVar Arrington was Michael Parsons before Michael Parsons. Right? LeVar Arrington was that guy that you could just move around. He was an athletic freak. He was huge. He would hit people. They would shudder to, think, I don't want to get hit by this guy again. You know, put Troy Aikman out of the league, hit guys, and they didn't get up, you know, or they were slow to get up, could blitz, could rush off the edge, could drop into coverage. You name it, LeVar could do it in those days. Anyway, LeVar was outstanding in 2002. But honestly, the only portions of the roster that were any good were linebacker and the secondary. Everywhere else, we sucked. The defensive line was absolutely trash. We couldn't stop the run because the defensive line sucked. So the linebackers were always getting blocked. Our secondary was really good, but you didn't get enough pass rush, so it didn't really matter. You know, you had Fred Smoot, you had Champ Bailey, you had Darrell Green, Ifeanyi Ohalete, who I absolutely loved. Ifeanyi Ohalete, okay? It's a shame that only people really remember him for not wanting to give up the 26 jersey when Clinton Portis got here. Like, that's the biggest claim to fame that he has. He was an outstanding safety for a small period of time here. Like, he was one of my favorite players here. He was really good in the 2002 season, by the way. And so it was a quality secondary, man. You know, Sam Shade was still here. I thought he was on the back end of his Redskin tenure, though. Remember, 2002 was the year that we sported the 75th anniversary jerseys. Oh, my God. They were so crispy. If I could find my Clinton Portis one, I would have had it for this particular video, but I don't know where it is. I'd have to look for it. But you guys know the ones I'm talking about. That deep burgundy with the spear on the helmet. Whew. That was the year we rocked those. So, yeah, the linebackers were outstanding. You had a young LeVar Arrington. You had a young, what is his name? Why am I blanking on his name? He went to the Giants and won a Super Bowl. Antonio Pierce. You had a young Antonio Pierce. You had a young LeVar Arrington. They went out and signed Jeremiah Trotter. Wasn't a good signing. And Jesse Armstead, but, you know, back end of his career too. But still, he was still a productive player. So the linebackers were really good. The secondary was really good. Defensive line sucked. Offensive line wasn't very good. Specifically guard to guard, we were trash. Running back was good with Stephen Davis, but one of the big questions heading into the season is, here comes Steve Spurrier with the fun and gun, which means he wants to throw it all around the football field. Where does that leave Stephen Davis, the guy that's rushed for over 1,400 yards 2 out of the last 3 seasons, and the 1 year that he didn't rush for 1,400 yards, he rushed for 1,300 yards. What happens to him? Of course, he would have the worst season of his Redskins career as a starter. Obviously, he was here that first year with Terry Allen as more of a fullback. But, yeah, he didn't rush for 1,000 yards in 2002. So it was a down year for him, obviously, with Steve Spurrier as your head coach. And we'll get into that and the specifics of that. So just setting the table. Bad roster. Again, your tight ends are Zoran Flemister. Robert Royal was drafted. So your draft picks that year that were notable, first round was Patrick Ramsey. Second round was, let's see if I can recall. Can't think of who the second rounder was that year. I do remember that Robert Royal was in the 5th round. I liked him way more than I should have at the tight end position. And Rock Cartwright was a 7th round pick that year. It was another solid draft, but that proved to be a very unproductive draft for Washington. None of those guys really turned out to be very, very good. Anyway, so your receivers are Rod Gardner, Darnarian McCants, Chris During. Who am I missing? I can't think of. It was another taller receiver. I can't think of his name. I think he wore 88. I can't remember his name. Very forgettable. Anyway, it was a bad group of receivers. Tight ends weren't much better. You know, Spurrier, I told you he didn't know anything when he got here. He gives, so Shane Matthews' number in college was 9. And that was his preferred number of choice. He wore that in the NFL. I think he wore that with the Bears, if I'm not mistaken. And so he gets here, and Steve Spurrier gives him 9. It's Sonny Jurgensen's number. Nobody wears 9. Are you kidding me? So somebody gets to Spurrier and says, bro, what are you doing? You can't give him 9. That's Sonny Jurgensen's jersey number. He's like, shit, I didn't know. Excuse me. So he switches it to 6, right? Does the same thing with Bobby Mitchell's 49. He gives that to Leonard Stevens, who's like the 3rd string tight end on the team. And he ends up keeping the number the entire year. And that was the last straw for Bobby Mitchell, who was the assistant general manager and had been for like 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever. He's like, it probably was like more like 10 years or so. He's like, enough of this shit. I'm out of here. That was his last year in 2002. He couldn't take it anymore. That was like the last straw and the last line of disrespect for him. So there was a lot of nonsense going on before the season even started. So you get to the regular season, or you get to the preseason. You got to start there in Osaka, Japan, because understand that in college there is no preseason. They go straight from spring football into the regular season. Right? There are no practice games. So Steve didn't really understand the concept of the preseason. So he's got his backups in. The 49ers have their backups in, but he's scheming it up. He's out there showing the rest of the NFL exactly what he's going to do, right? Spreading them out, fun and gun, throwing it around the football yard. We scored 38 points. We beat them 38-7. He's on the sideline high-fiving. He's excited. Man, this thing's going to be easy. It's going to be just like I'm back in the SEC at Florida, killing the Tennessee Volunteers, or filleting the Vanderbilt Commodores. This is going to be great. Oh, is he in for a rude awakening or what? So we get to week 1, Arizona Cardinals. They suck. They're no longer in the division. Remember, 2002 was the first year that the Texans got into the league, and that allowed the NFL to split the divisions into 8 equal divisions of 4, because there were 31 teams prior to the Texans becoming an expansion team. So the Cardinals were in the NFC East. Before then, that first year in 2002, when the Texans came in the league, the Cardinals made their way out west to the NFC West, and so the NFC East became what it is known as today, is those 4 teams, just the Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, and Redskins, or Commanders now. But so the Cardinals were no longer in the division, but they were the first team up on the schedule, and they still sucked. But they put up a hell of a fight. But Shane Matthews goes out there, throws 3 touchdown passes. We scored 30 whatever points, win the game. Spurrier's thinking, hell yes, I got the formula. Okay, I got the antidote for this NFL thing. The next 2 weeks we get our asses whooped, but not like week 2 against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football. That was an epic ass kicking. I mean, thorough. Shoes, coat, hat took it. Okay. And that was on national television for everybody to see. And remember, Spurrier coming to Washington was a big deal. So there were a bunch of primetime games that year. And this season was so uneven. So you start the season with Shane Matthews. He starts the first 3 games. We have a bye week in week 4. So we come off the bye. He's awful after the first game where he was spectacular. He's awful the next 2 games. So here goes Spurrier with that bullshit. Because in college, Spurrier, he would switch quarterbacks on drives. This guy start the game, then he bring another quarterback in. Like, he was doing that bullshit in college. So he's like, well, Shane's not working. Hey, Danny, you get on out there, man, throw football around field. So Danny gets in after the bye week against the Tennessee Titans. Keep in mind, the Titans are one of the best teams in football at the time. They're struggling that year, though. So we catch them at the right time. And First possession of the game, Danny Warfel goes down. And instead of going back to Shane Matthews, he puts the rookie in. This is when I get excited because I want to see what the rookie, I don't give a shit. I know what Danny Warfel and Shane Matthews are in the league already. I already know what these guys, they're bums. I want to see the young guy. So he puts in PRAM and he shreds the Tennessee Titans. I mean, does those boys, right? And we win the game against the Titans. Now, the Titans dropped to 1-4 in the season, and we even up our market 2-2. They win 10 out of their next 11 games, go 11-5 on the season, and make it all the way to the AFC Championship. So they weren't trash, okay? We just caught them at the right time. So now I'm excited. I'm Birdman hand rubbing. The next week, we're playing the Saints at the crib. P-Ram's getting a start. Let's get it. Oy vey. Whew. This was one of, if not for the Monday Night Massacre against Philadelphia, this is probably the worst start to a game I've ever seen in my life. We turned the ball over 4 times in the first quarter. 4 times in the first quarter. P-Ram throws 3 picks in the first quarter. Stephen Davis fumbles. It leads to 20 Saints points in the first quarter. P-Ram throws 4 picks in the game and we get our asses kicked. And another thing you have to keep in mind, when your roster sucks, so does your special teams. We had the worst special teams in 2002. We gave up kick returns, punt returns. We had like 2 or 3 kicks blocked. We were awful. We had a garbage field goal kicker. Our kicking situation was trash from pretty much all of the 2000s until we got John Hall from the Jets. And we'll get to the Jetskins in about 2 or 3 years or so coming up. So our kicking situation was trash, which is why we went out and got John Hall. So in that Saints game, we turned it over 5 times. And we gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. I mean, what in the hell? I'm amazed that we didn't give up 50 that day. Anyway, we lose that game. And immediately after that, they give him another shot the following week. And it didn't go well there either. And then he gets benched. P-Ram gets benched. So he goes back to, I think it's Matthews that he goes to. And this was the problem with Spurrier. He's just so impatient and he's yanking quarterbacks in and out. Instead of just letting P-Ram go through the bumps in the road, he goes back to one of these bums. And so we go from 2-2 to 2-4, 4-2, or 2-4 rather, because we lose 2 straight. And then that was the thing of that season. We would win 1, we would lose 2, we would win 1, then we would lose 2, then we would win 1, and we would lose 2. But we lost those 2 games, dropped to 2-4. We won a game. I want to say it was the Colts on a Sunday night. And remember, that's prime Peyton Manning. Prime Peyton Manning. Okay? That's 13-3 every year, throwing for damn near 5,000 yards. Marvin Harrison, Pro Bowl. Yeah, Edgerrin James. Like, it's that Indianapolis. We were up 20-0 on a Sunday night against the Indianapolis Colts. And I swore we were going to lose that game. They came all the way back. This thing is 21-23. With the Colts going for a 2-point conversion to tie it. They had just scored a touchdown, went for 2, got it, scored another touchdown, going for 2 here, and Fred Smoot makes the play of the game, breaking up a pass in the end zone on the 2-point conversion to preserve a 2-point lead. We then drive it down. Shane Matthews, if I'm not mistaken, was the quarterback in that game. Takes us back down the field. It might have been Danny Warfel. At that point, when you start juggling these quarterbacks back and forth, I lose track. I want to say that it was Shane Matthews back in the game. And it was Matthews. I remember. It was Matthews. And we go down the field. We burn up pretty much all the clock, kick a field goal, and end up winning the game 26-21. which was a pleasant surprise. I did not expect to be. That was the thing with Spurrier as well. Like, we had no business beating the Titans. We had no business beating the Colts that year. We beat the Rams that year. They struggled, though. They had started the season off like 0-6 or 0-5. Then they won 5 in a row, and then we broke their win streak. I didn't expect us to do that. So that put us at 3-4 after beating the Colts on that Sunday night. And the next week, we beat the Seattle Seahawks 14-6 or 3 or something like that. And it was a defensive struggle. The passing game sucked. The running game was really the catalyst. And Spurrier looked dejected after the game. I remember reading this in that Time article about how Spurrier was dejected after the game. They won. And he looked like they had just gotten clobbered because the passing game didn't. That's all he cared about was, can we throw the football? So the next week, we had just won 2 in a row, and the run game was coming alive. Stephen Davis was really good against the Colts. He was even better against the Seahawks on the road. And we got the worst rush defense in the league coming up the following week again in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Perfect time to feed Stephen Davis the ball 25, 30 times and get us a dub and make it 3 in a row and get over 500 for the first time since week 1. And what does the Ole Ball Coach do? He sends Shane Matthews out there, and he throws it 50 times. We run it 16 times and throw it 50 times against the worst rush defense in football and get our asses whooped against a bad Jacksonville team. After the game, I remember this. After the game, they asked him, what made you decide to go away from the run that was working so well against the worst rush defense in football and throw it 50 times? And he said, well, it was a good night to throw the ball around. Good night to play pitch and catch. What? What are you talking about, dude? It was a great night to play pitch and catch. I can't tell. You threw it 50 times. Your quarterback went like 24 or 50 with 2 picks. You run it 16 times and you lose the game going away. It's a great night to play pitch and catch, though, right? Ole Ball Coach. You got to love him, man. So we lose that game. We lose the next game. All right. And so he takes Shane Matthews out and he puts Danny Warfel back in. All right. Then we upset the Rams. Okay. So Warfel then goes on Thanksgiving. And this is when shit falls apart. You know, the Thanksgiving game against Dallas. You got a chance to turn. Dallas sucks. I've already like Dallas went 5-11 like 4 years in a row. This was another one of those 5-11 years. Dave Campo was their head coach. He was awful. He gets fired after the 2002 season. The quarterback situation after Aikman got injured was just horrendous. Chad Hutchinson is in the game on Thanksgiving. This is the game that Spurrier promised to give Daniel Snyder the game ball after we beat Dallas. Of course, Dallas highlighted it, put it on their bulletin board. I remember that. That was a big topic of discussion during that Thanksgiving Day game. And we jump on top of these boys 20-10. We're up. We're dominating the Cowboys. It's in the third quarter. We're pinned deep in our own territory. I remember this. And, you know, it's 3rd and long. The Cowboys are backed up with their guys. They don't want to give up a first down. So we're going to dump it off to the running back, Kenny Watson. This is your backup running back, Kenny effing Watson. This is what we have on the roster, okay? I'm playing Madden, and you want me to beat other teams with Kenny Watson at running back? Thompson is the name of the receiver. Darius Thompson? These are the guys I'm supposed to be throwing the football to? Darnarian McCants? This is who I'm supposed to be throwing the football to? And he throws it to Kenny Watson. And it's an easy catchable football right off his hands into the arms of Roy Williams, who returns it 3 yards for a touchdown. And just like that, the game changed. We go from up 10. And also, another point that I must mention in that game, our punter, Brian Anger. So I told you our special teams was horrendous, right? So we get a field goal blocked in that game by Dallas. Our punter, who is the holder, goes to try to recover the fumble, the blocked kick rather, and he gets kneed in the face. His helmet comes down and gashes his nose. It's a nasty cut. He has to leave the game. He's got a broken nose. So our field goal kicker has to now punt. So they score the touchdown. They score another touchdown, take the lead. We're down 24. I think at the time of this punt, it was still 20-17 we were up. It could have already been 24-20. Dallas was up, whatever the case may be. We're kicking from our own territory, and our field goal kicker comes in and kicks an 18-yard punt. Shanks it. You can't make this shit up. Dallas sucks ass. They can't beat anybody. Their coach is about to be fired. And we go into Dallas on Thanksgiving against a worthless Cowboys team who's beaten us 9 times in a row. And we lose to Chad Hutchinson and the Dallas Cowboys 27-20. I was done after that. The season, in my mind, was over. I put Patrick Ramsey in right now. Not now, right now. We endured another week of Danny Warfel before they finally waved the white flag and put Patrick Ramsey in for the final 4 games or so of the season. The last game of the season was against Dallas. Woo! We finally beat them. Yay! It was Darrell Green's. The most notable part there was it was Darrell Green's final game in his NFL career. And I remember them giving him the little reverse on the punt. Champ Bailey fields a punt. Darrell Green comes around. He gives it to Darrell Green, and Darrell Green kind of recreates the infamous Chicago Bears punt return where he jumps over the defender. He's running down the left sideline. He jumps over a guy. Unfortunately, he doesn't score this time. But it was a big game, you know, and everybody went crazy. I went crazy. It was good to see Darrell touch it because that was the only year of his career where he didn't have an interception, if you recall. All 19 years previous to that final year, he had at least 1 pick. That's an NFL record that will never be broken. And so he hadn't touched the ball all year, so that was their way of getting him a touch. And I wanted him to get a pick so badly in that final game of the season. It didn't happen, but at least he touched it. So we beat Dallas, but it was bittersweet. Finished the season 7-9. Not very good. Not very good. And so you go into the offseason, and I'm not going to lie to you. I had little to no hope. The only thing that I was hoping is that P. Ram would be better in his second year. And that's what you expect. You expect the growing pains of a rookie. He made some really good throws in that rookie season. He made some really bad throws. And he fumbled a lot. And our offensive line wasn't very good. And Stephen Davis was probably not going to be back, it looked like. And so there are a lot of things that I didn't know what was going to occur. But I knew there needed to be a lot of changes on this offense. There needed to be a lot of changes in general. This was not a good roster. And so the best is still yet to come with the Ole Ball Coach. Okay, I mean, we're just getting started with him. 7-9, that's the tip of the iceberg, man. We still got a whole nother year of the Ole Ball Coach. And things are going to get very, very interesting in this last year. This last year kind of gives you Jim Zorn vibes, if you know where I'm going with this thing. So hang in there. That's where I'm going to leave you as we continue on the Reign of Terror. This was chapter number 4. And look forward to giving you, this is chapter 4. Giving you chapter 5 tomorrow as we wrap up the Spurrier era here in Washington. And we get to some really good shit, man. Gibbs 2.0. That's on the horizon. But we're not there yet. We still got one more year of the Ole Ball Coach. Not very good. Not very good. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Reign of Terror, as we continue to chronicle the 23 years of hell Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.